You're lying awake, eyes closed, but something feels wrong. Not frightening, just unfamiliar. The room is yours. The bed is yours. The air still carries the same quiet hum of the fans spinning above. And yet, you feel a coldness you can't explain. Not in your skin, but somewhere deeper, like you've forgotten something. Or maybe someone has remembered you. A strange image flickers across your mind. A staircase, spiraling downward into water. You can see yourself at the bottom, barefoot, watching stars shimmer below the surface. You don't know this place, and yet you feel certain you've been there, certain that some part of you never left. You try to shrug it off, but it keeps returning clearer each time. Have you ever remembered something that didn't happen? A memory that doesn't belong to your life, but one that arrives fully formed, like a dream you never had but still somehow recall in perfect detail? What if you're not going crazy? What if that memory is real, but not from this version of you? Tonight, we drift into that eerie silence between sleep and time itself, where the mind begins to echo against the walls of a multiverse. There are people who remember speaking languages they never learned, children who wake up crying in pain, gripping at scars they were never born with, people who dream the lives of strangers and then find out those strangers existed. It's easy to dismiss these as tricks of the brain, sleep disorders, imagination, coincidence. But what if these experiences aren't fragments, but signals? What if every version of you, across infinite timelines, is trying to remember itself? This is Stellar Sleep Tales. And tonight, we're not just exploring the science of memory. We're drifting into something far stranger, something you may have felt before, but never spoken aloud. A presence, an echo, a version of yourself that refuses to fade. So get comfortable, let your breathing slow, and allow your thoughts to drift, just a little, into the space between timelines. Because this story doesn't just belong to someone else. It might already belong to you, and if it does, you'll feel it before the end. Now, close your eyes, if they aren't already, and let's begin. You weren't supposed to remember. That's the strange thing. Most people don't. The timelines are too well separated, the veil's too thick. But every now and then, something leaks through. A dream, for instance, that doesn't feel like a dream. Not symbolic, it's not surreal, just detailed, specific. You wake up knowing the color of the wallpaper, the smell of the ocean air outside, the name of someone you loved dearly in that dream, even though you've never met them. These aren't just dreams, they're echoes, fractures from a different life bleeding into this one. Science, for the most part, hasn't caught up with this phenomenon. Neurology will tell you it's random synaptic firing. Psychology may say you're trying to cope with trauma, or your brain is inventing comfort. But none of that explains the accuracy, the emotions, the knowing. This is where past life theory collides with the modern multiverse, not as a spiritual fantasy, but as a potentially real event happening across dimensions. In one timeline, you turned left instead of right. In another, you said yes instead of no. In one, you never made it home. In another, you never left the house that day at all. If every decision branches into a new version of reality, then there are infinite versions of you existing right now, some nearly identical, others unrecognizably different. But here's the twist. What if those versions aren't fully sealed off from each other? What if memory doesn't just live in your brain, but also in your existence across time? This theory isn't just philosophical, it's grounded in real quantum research. Scientists exploring superposition and entanglement have long proposed that particles can exist in multiple states at once. Extrapolated to human consciousness, that suggests a version of you might exist in several realities simultaneously, and occasionally, those realities collide. One of the earliest documented examples came from a girl named Anaya in 1974. She was born in India, but at age 6, she began speaking fluent Hungarian. Her parents had never left their village. She had no access to foreign television or books, and yet she described a home with red rooftops and icy blue lakes. Her drawings matched a remote town in Eastern Europe almost exactly. When shown pictures from Hungary, she burst into tears, claiming, "That's where I fell through the ice." Of course, no one believed her. How could they? But what if she wasn't reincarnated, just misaligned? What if her consciousness slipped slightly during sleep into the version of herself that once lived and drowned in that other timeline? Open loops like these never fully close. That's the nature of time echoes. They start small, a scent that doesn't belong, a familiarity with someone you've never met. But over time, the intrusions grow. Some report full conversations with people that don't exist in this life, but feel real, consistent, and loving. Others report specific knowledge of events from timelines that never occurred here, but later turn out to have happened somewhere else. The most disturbing cases involve what researchers call dual recall syndrome, people who experience two complete versions of a personal memory, each equally real, equally detailed, and mutually exclusive. They remember living in one city and another. They remember two wedding days, two childhood homes, two sets of scars. Only one of them exists physically, but emotionally they both feel real. This is where soft horror begins to creep in, because if you can't trust your memories, who are you? Are you a single self or a collection of fractured selves, each trying to rewrite your mind in their image? It gets stranger. Some physicists believe that time itself may not be linear, that our experience of time is just a collapsed perception of something far more complex. If so, then your consciousness isn't simply moving through time, it might be creating it, or worse, being manipulated by it. Now ask yourself, why do some people report the same kinds of dreams again and again? Not variations, but repeats, like a rerun. A scenario played out the same way every few months. You wake in a sweat, remembering how you fell off the cliff, or walked through the glowing forest, or drowned in a glass ocean. And you tell yourself, it's just a dream. But what if that's not true? What if it's a version of you trying desperately to be remembered? Pattern interruptions in your memory are the first clue. Deja vu is another. But the strongest signal is emotional dissonance. Those moments when you feel joy or grief for something you shouldn't care about. A song you've never heard that moves you to tears. A person you meet for the first time but feel instantly connected to. These are markers, cross-dimensional fingerprints. The more you notice them, the more they begin to align. And eventually, they may start aligning you. A woman named Dr. Evelyn Cho once ran a sleep study on timeline fragmentation. Her volunteers were fitted with neuroimaging headgear and asked to meditate on imagined selves. One participant, after just 7 days, began reporting full alternate life memories, complete with languages, names, family members, and histories that didn't exist. When shown fabricated photos of possible alternate lives, he identified them without hesitation. But here's the part that disturbed Dr. Cho. The memories didn't fade. Even months later, he still remembered both lives in full. One version where he was an accountant with no family, the other where he was a musician who'd lost a brother in a train accident. And he cried for that brother, even though he never existed here. Time echoes like this don't just whisper, they linger, and the more open you are to them, the louder they become. So tonight, if you find yourself dreaming of a staircase that spirals beneath water, or a stranger who says your name without asking for it, ask yourself, have you been here before, or are you just starting to remember the rest of you? Welcome to Stellar Sleep Tales. And if this story stirred something in you, some flicker of a life not quite your own, consider subscribing. These stories continue, but never quite end, because in the next segment, we go deeper. You've seen glimpses, but what happens when the multiverse finally starts waking up? Welcome to Stellar Sleep Tales. If you're just joining, this is part 3 of a journey through identity, memory, and the unknown edges of the multiverse. In this episode, we follow an encounter that should be impossible, yet it happens all the time, often quietly. A person you've never met knows your name. They look at you with a recognition so deep it unsettles something inside. Their voice, too familiar. Their smile, too knowing. So tonight we explore, what if a stranger remembers your life better than you do? For centuries, people have told stories about mysterious figures who seemed to know them, who approached without introduction but spoke as if they shared a history. In older cultures, these encounters were considered signs from ancestors or spirits slipping through from another realm. But what if they were something stranger? What if they were not spirits, but versions of you? Imagine walking through a quiet street. The world around you hums gently, streetlights blinking overhead. You hear footsteps, you turn, and someone is watching. At first, they seem ordinary, but the longer you stare, the more that sinking feeling grows. They don't blink, their head tilts, and before you can speak, they say your name, exactly the way you say it, the way your mother says it. They smile, not with warmth, but recognition. That kind of moment cannot be explained away, because in that instant, your brain doesn't react with confusion, it reacts with memory. Cases like this aren't as rare as we think. Psychologists have documented individuals who suffer what's called misattributed familiarity, a sense that someone unknown feels deeply known. But in recent years, physicists and philosophers have added another layer. They believe these glitches might be signs that two timelines are bleeding together, merging ever so slightly at the edges. These are called time echoes. A small ripple in your consciousness picks up a signal from another version of events where you did know that person, where you lived a different version of your life with different outcomes. In that timeline, maybe you took a different job, dated someone else, lived in another city. The version of you that made that decision still exists. That consciousness didn't vanish, it diverged. But occasionally, like the crossing of two waves, your timeline and theirs vibrate close enough that a piece of memory escapes. That's what you feel in your bones, not recognition of them, but a forgotten echo of yourself. Scientists working in quantum cognition propose that memory may not be stored solely in your brain. Some suggest it may be non local, spread across dimensions, entangled with versions of you who made different choices. This isn't spiritualism, it's cutting edge physics, overlapping with consciousness research. When you experience a stranger who knows your laugh, your handwriting, or the way you breathe before you speak, it may be because in their timeline you were close and they remember everything. What's terrifying is not the idea that someone else remembers you. What's terrifying is that you don't remember them, and yet they're right. They recall your favorite song, a scar you had as a child, even a story you've never told anyone in this world. That confusion you feel, that's the sensation of overlapping timelines. When you realize that something real is happening, but your identity no longer fits inside just one version of your life. Many call these encounters hallucinations, but studies on shared delusions show something fascinating. When two unrelated people report nearly identical visions, down to the dialogue and clothing, yet live in separate parts of the world, something larger may be at play. In 2023, a controlled experiment was conducted. Volunteers were given a deep, meditative protocol to induce subconscious memory surfacing. Over 60% of them described meeting someone who said, "You found me again," in different languages. Some even gave matching physical descriptions. What makes a memory real? Is it chronology or repetition? Your brain can be tricked into believing in false memories, but these are usually chaotic or disconnected. In time, echo encounters, the memories tend to be coherent, meaningful. They come with emotional weight, like the feeling of returning home. That suggests they may not be false memories, but displaced ones. Memories from a version of you that's not entirely gone, just not here. Some people experience timeline bleed not through strangers, but through objects. A book on the shelf they don't remember buying, a shirt in their closet they'd never wear, a photograph with someone they don't recall meeting, but in the image they're laughing as if they'd been friends for years. These artifacts, sometimes called transitional remnants, may be fragments of another self's belongings. When the timelines edge too close, physical objects may flicker between worlds, briefly, quietly, just long enough to confuse you. There's one case that haunts researchers. A woman named Elise kept a diary. Each night she recorded events of her day. One morning, she awoke to find entries in her own handwriting describing events that hadn't happened. She assumed it was sleep writing. But within days, every one of those events began occurring: conversations, encounters, even accidents. By the end of the month, the diary was writing tomorrow. Scientists tested the ink, the pressure, the time of recording. It was her. But her memories were arriving late. What if your future self is already writing in you, whispering memories from one step ahead, nudging your path? At Stellar Sleep Tales, we believe questions like these deserve more than a shrug. They deserve space, silence, thoughtful reflection in the dark hours when the world is still and your mind is free to float. Because these aren't just stories, They're echoes, echoes from the edge of time. Let's create a soft pattern interrupt here. Pause. Breathe. Picture yourself not as one person, but as many threads, stretching in different directions. In this thread, you're listening, but in another, you may already be dreaming. And somewhere else, a version of you is wide awake, wondering why they keep remembering people they've never met. Now, ask yourself a question, one you cannot easily answer. Have you ever lost time, not just forgotten something, but felt an entire memory slide out of reach? A face you should know, a name you almost speak aloud, but it fades just before you do. That's not forgetfulness. That may be interference, a ripple, a bleed. Our minds are delicate antennas. When timelines grow close, they hum, they resonate. If you've ever had a moment where the air felt too thick or a room too silent, where your reflection didn't blink when you did, it's not madness, it's alignment. For just a second, you became aware of the vast multiplicity of your being. As we close this segment, remember this isn't the end of the story. This is just one crossing, one fragment. The stranger who remembers you, they may come again, or they may be watching now, listening through another version of this very voice, waiting for you to remember them. Stay curious, stay aware. The next time someone looks at you with impossible familiarity, don't turn away too quickly. They might just be you. You wake up. But something feels off. Not the kind of off that makes you panic, just a slow strangeness. You look around your room. Everything seems normal. The same clock ticking softly, the same blanket pulled halfway off the bed. But something in you knows this is not how you left things. You could swear your favorite book was on the nightstand. Now it is gone. You remember closing the door before sleeping. Now it hangs slightly open. You remember a dream, or maybe a conversation, or maybe both. A friend told you a secret, but you cannot remember their name, or if they ever existed. You tell yourself it is nothing. A trick of tired eyes, a confused mind slowly waking up. But deep down, something unsettles you, a thought you cannot shake. This is not the timeline you fell asleep in. And maybe, just maybe, you have not always been here. It starts like that. Small slips, a word that feels wrong in your mouth, a memory that does not line up with what everyone else remembers, a street name you remember clearly, only to find it never existed. These are what some people call fractures, but a few researchers now believe they are something else. They believe these are signs that the multiverse is waking up. Science fiction made the idea of parallel universes feel distant, a fantasy, a maybe one day possibility. But real scientists have been studying quantum branching for years. They believe that with every choice, a new path is created. A new you walks down it. A new version of reality unfolds, not in theory, in real time. Some theories suggest every possible outcome of every moment actually happens somewhere. And if that is true, then there are infinite timelines, infinite versions of you, infinite versions of the people you love. And some versions may not be sealed away as neatly as we think. A growing number of people around the world have begun reporting shared memories that do not line up with our current reality. Some remember the famous bear from childhood books with a different spelling. Others swear a historical figure died years earlier than the record says. Some insist a building they remember visiting never existed. And when these mismatches happen to enough people, the internet gives them a name: the Mandela effect. At first, it was seen as a joke, then a curiosity. Now, some physicists and psychologists are taking it more seriously because when enough people share the same wrong memory, maybe it is not a wrong memory at all. Maybe it is a right memory from the wrong timeline, and maybe you are one of the people who slipped. This raises a terrifying question. If the multiverse exists and it is waking up, what does that mean for the version of you listening to this story right now? Imagine that every night when you fall asleep, your consciousness does not just rest, it travels, it searches, it aligns with the timeline closest to your vibration, one where your regrets are fewer, one where the people you love are still alive, one where you feel more at home, more safe, more real. But what if those timelines are not perfectly sealed? What if bits of them start leaking through? What if you bring pieces of other lives back with you each morning? This would explain why some people begin to remember events that never happened here, why dreams feel more like memories than fantasy, why familiar places sometimes feel like stage sets that's slightly off from what they should be. The lighting is wrong, the tone feels distant, the people act just slightly different. It is not a glitch, it is a bleed, a soft overlap between versions of reality. Dr. Lena Sorensen, a cognitive researcher, once interviewed over 200 subjects who experienced multiverse drift. She coined the term drift for the feeling of slowly losing your grip on one version of self and starting to blend into another. These subjects reported everything from alternate birthplaces to remembering completely different family structures. Some remembered entire relationships that never happened here. Others described cities that do not exist. One man even remembered a musical composition in full, which he claimed was famous in his original timeline. He could hum the melody perfectly. Music experts said it was structured like something from the late 60s, but no one had ever heard it before. Dr. Sorensen proposed something strange, that these individuals were not delusional or confused. They were simply more sensitive to timeline convergence, more aware, and in some rare cases more mobile. She believed sleep was the key. Her theory was that during deep sleep, the mind becomes unanchored from fixed time. Consciousness floats, navigates, connects to other states of self across the multiverse. And while most people realign with their original timeline upon waking, others do not. They wake in a reality slightly off, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but always different. If this is true, then the you who wakes up tomorrow may not be the you who went to bed tonight. And you may never notice until you do, until something small flickers in your reality. A forgotten name, a reversed memory, a face you recognize on the street, even though you know you have never met. You look back, but they are gone. Your heart races. You feel sick, but you keep walking, telling yourself it is nothing. Except it is not nothing. It is the multiverse reaching through, and it will not stop there. In spiritual circles, some call this the thinning, a soft veil slowly wearing down between layers of reality. Some believe it is accelerating, that the timelines are not just waking up, but converging, merging into fewer streams, which means overlap, which means confusion, which means memories that should not exist start to appear. And in some cases, identities begin to collapse. A man in Denmark was recorded in a sleep lab, whispering dozens of names during REM sleep. None of them belonged to him. When asked later, he said he did not remember speaking, but he recalled a strange dream of sitting in a white room full of mirrors. In each reflection, a different version of himself stared back. Some were older, some were women, one wore a uniform he had never seen before, but all of them were him, and all of them were afraid. These reports are increasing, and not just among fringe believers. Trained scientists, astronauts, and pilots have reported momentary timeline slips, times when reality blinked, when surroundings changed for just a second and then shifted back. These are dismissed in official reports, but quietly they are being studied, and the results are disturbing. If the multiverse is waking up, then we must ask what role we play in it. Are we just passengers riding between worlds we cannot see? Or are we creators, shaping which timelines survive based on the attention we give them? This brings us to attention theory. Some researchers believe that consciousness shapes reality, not just within one timeline, but across many. The versions of reality we feed with focus become stronger. The ones we ignore begin to fade. This means your dreams, your fears, your memories all have power. Not just here, but everywhere. Imagine that. Every time you replay a memory, you strengthen that version of the timeline. Every time you choose a new path, you begin building a new one. Every emotion you feel might send ripples through 1,000 versions of your life. And in return, some of those ripples find their way back. This is the echo, not a sound, but a feeling, a reminder that you are not alone, that there are other yous walking beside you in realities you will never fully see. Some are close, others are drifting away, but all of them are connected by one thread, you. And tonight, that thread is humming. If you feel a strange warmth on the back of your neck, or a soft voice in your head speaking a name you do not remember, do not be afraid. It is just another version of you saying hello, another version you might never meet, but one who still exists, one who remembers you. And in the next segment, we follow that thread deeper. You have woken up in the wrong timeline before, but now we ask what happens when you are remembered by versions of yourself you have never known, and what happens if they are not kind. You wake from a dream that was not yours. The images are clear. A beach you have never seen, a sky with two suns. A woman calls your name, but you do not know her. The water tastes like copper. The sand clings to your feet like ash. You are holding something important. You are crying. You are in love. And then suddenly, you are awake again, heart pounding, hands trembling. You know that dream was real, but it is not from this life, and it is not the first time. For some, this begins with a single strange night, a dream that feels too detailed to be fiction, too emotionally charged to be random. You wake up with an ache in your chest, a sense of deep longing, as if something precious has just been taken from you. But you cannot say what it was. You cannot even say who you were. This is not sleep disturbance. This is a crack in identity. The more it happens, the harder it is to ignore. You start keeping notebooks, sketching unfamiliar symbols. You start recognizing songs you have never heard before. You start searching for the places in your dreams, only to discover they do not exist. Not here, but maybe somewhere. Scientists studying the dreaming mind often call dreams the brain's theater, a place where thoughts and memories are rearranged into strange stories. But these explanations cannot account for the dreams that repeat, the ones that feel more like returning home than storytelling, the ones that begin with the same moment, the same voice, the same version of you waiting on the other side. What if dreams are not made by the mind, but received by it? What if some dreams are transmissions? In recent studies, researchers observed that certain individuals who experienced recurring dreams about unfamiliar places shared many overlapping patterns: water, fire, towers, names spoken in languages they had never studied. These were not connected by culture or suggestion. The participants lived in different countries, different lives, but their dreams echoed each other. One theory suggests that during deep sleep, your brain waves slow to a point where the boundaries between timelines become thin. This allows echoes to slip through, fragments of a life you never lived, or perhaps a life you are living somewhere else. Some dreamers describe entire relationships, decades of time, a whole other life unfolding night after night. Each dream a new chapter. They begin to miss people they have never met. They cry for homes they have never walked through. They start using names they never heard before. And the strangest part is that the emotions do not fade when they wake. They linger, as if those people were real, as if something has been torn away. A child in Romania once told her parents she had a brother named Ishan. She played with him every night in the green room, but she was an only child. Her parents had never heard the name. She became withdrawn during the day, lively only at night. When her parents pressed her, she said Ishan was scared, that he could not wake up, that he wanted her to stay with him forever. The family moved. The dreams stopped. But years later, she wrote a short story about a boy trapped in a room made of glass. No doors, no windows, only reflections of his own face. He screamed at the sky, but no one ever came, and his name was Ishan. This is not fiction. This is memory from a different branch. Some believe we do not dream about other people. We dream as other people. And those people are versions of us, flickering through the timelines, touching fingertips through the veil. There are moments when you wake and feel that you are still halfway in that other world. You try to move, but your body feels unfamiliar. The walls seem smaller. The air seems thicker. You wonder if you have fully come back, or if part of you is still there. This may be the result of consciousness drift. When you sleep, you may not fully return to the same self. You may realign with a nearby version, close enough to match, but not identical. This explains why some people experience sudden changes in taste, memory, or even personality after certain dreams. A new you has arrived, one with a slightly different map of the world, and perhaps one carrying scars from another life. Many people report injuries in dreams that ache the next morning: a knife to the shoulder, a fall from a cliff, a burn across the arm. The skin shows nothing, but the pain remains. Doctors call it phantom pain, the mind playing tricks. But what if it is not a trick? What if it is the nervous system remembering something that never happened here, but did happen elsewhere? This theory is unsettling. because it means trauma is transferable, that you may carry emotional damage from a life you never lived, and you may never understand why you feel fear, grief, or guilt that has no cause in this timeline. But there is another side to it. Love is transferable too. There are people who wake from dreams in tears because they feel loved in a way they never have before, protected, seen, cherished, and they search for that feeling all their lives, not realizing it came from a version of themselves who lived it fully. You may have already felt this, a softness, a warmth, a moment in a dream that made you feel safe beyond explanation. That feeling is real because the version of you who felt it was real, and maybe still is. Some traditions say we dream of the future, others say we dream of the past, but this theory says we dream sideways, across, inward, outward. We dream as messengers between lives, and sometimes the messages are warnings. A man in Oregon began having dreams of driving down a narrow mountain road. Every night, the same road, the same curve, the same white truck barreling toward him. He always woke up before impact. But one day, while on vacation, he saw the road from his dream. The curve, the trees, the angle of the light. He pulled over and waited. 5 minutes later, a white truck lost control and slammed into the guardrail where he would have been. He told no one for years. Because how do you explain being warned by another you? Dreams do not belong only to the sleeping. They belong to the multiverse. They belong to the collective self. You are not just dreaming, you are being contacted. Some researchers now believe we could build bridges through these dreams, stable pathways to communicate with other selves. This is no longer pure science fiction. Meditation techniques, sound frequencies, and shared dream protocols are being tested. Some groups report joint dreaming, shared symbols, agreed upon signals across different sleep cycles. If it is real, it changes everything. It means we are not just connected through timelines, we are guiding each other home. And this raises one final question. What if the version of you you have always dreamed of becoming is not a fantasy? What if they are dreaming of you too? And what if the path forward is not linear, but reciprocal? In the next segment, we turn toward the thing watching you in the mirror, not your reflection, but the version of you you were never supposed to see, one who never left the timeline they regret, and one who may not be done with you yet. So breathe gently, you are safe. This is Stellar Sleep Tales. And if these stories drift into your dreams tonight, remember, they might not be yours, but they still belong to you.
There's a mirror in your home you avoid, not because of superstition, not because of anything you've seen, but because sometimes when you pass by too quickly, you feel something pause inside it. Not your reflection, something else. A delay in motion, a hesitation, as if the image looking back at you is not a perfect match, as if it is deciding whether to keep pretending. Mirrors are harmless, we are told. They do not store energy. They do not trap spirits. They only bounce light back at you. But deep down, something in your bones resists the simplicity. You feel it in hotel rooms, in bathrooms late at night, in glass doors at the end of long hallways. A primal discomfort, a sense that you are being watched by yourself, but not the self you know. This chapter begins with theory few dare to say out loud, that the versions of you scattered across infinite timelines are not always benign. Some are stagnant, some are regretful, and some are still watching. Mirrors may be a metaphor, but they may also be more. In quantum theory, the concept of symmetry is essential. Every particle has an opposing mirror twin existing in complementary balance. Physics is full of reflections, spin and antispin, charge and anticharge. Even entire theories about mirror matter have emerged. These suggest that for every atom we observe, there might be an invisible mirror counterpart. What if consciousness mirrors itself too? Not just as thought, but as form. A version of you that exists in a timeline of opposite decisions. A version shaped not by the paths you took, but by the ones you didn't. Every choice you made sent another you in the opposite direction. And sometimes these other selves become aware. Not intellectually, emotionally. They feel the weight of the life they didn't get to live. And sometimes they try to look back. Some dreamers report a recurring phenomenon, standing in front of a mirror and noticing small delays. Eyes that move just a fraction too late. A blink that does not match. Some say they see themselves smiling slightly when they were not smiling at all. These incidents are often dismissed as sleep deprivation or imagination, but the feelings linger. One man reported taping a mirror during sleep. In the morning, the recording showed nothing unusual, but the audio picked up a strange, breathy whisper repeating the same phrase. "You left me here." Another described waking from a nap and seeing herself already standing in the mirror before she had moved. She stood frozen, watching the reflection fade back into sync. She no longer keeps mirrors in her home. You do not have to believe in hauntings to find this unsettling, because this is not about ghosts. It is about you, the version of you who chose differently, who broke under pressure, who betrayed instead of forgave, who looked away instead of helping. That self still exists, not metaphorically, but somewhere in the fabric of the multiverse. And some believe these mirror selves grow hungry over time, not for food, for freedom. There are accounts from individuals who feel followed by themselves. They report sudden flashes of their own face in crowds, reflections appearing in surfaces that should not reflect, dreams where they are chased not by a monster, but by themselves, older, colder, and smiling without warmth. In psychological terms, this might be interpreted as repressed guilt or fractured identity. But what if the mind is not fracturing? What if it is receiving? There's a working hypothesis in consciousness studies called cognitive resonance theory. It proposes that minds in similar states of emotion and thought can briefly overlap, especially during transitional phases like sleep or grief. This overlap may allow one consciousness to feel the presence of another version of itself, especially if that version is desperate. Desperation leaves echoes. A woman in Norway began seeing another her in mirrors after a traumatic breakup. This reflection seemed slightly gaunter, dark circles under the eyes, lips curled downward. Over time, it began smiling back, then mouthing words. Eventually, the reflection began moving on its own. She covered all the mirrors in her house. But she claimed the reflection found other ways: shadows on windows, flashes in her phone camera, reflections in dark water. She wrote in her journal, "It's me, but hollow. She wants out. I think I let her in." What could this mean? One theory suggests that certain reflections are not passive at all. They are intersections, weak points in the divide between timelines. If two versions of you approach the mirror from opposite sides, same moment, same emotional frequency, a crack may form, just long enough for awareness to transfer, or for something else to cross. This idea is not new. In ancient mythologies, mirrors were often seen as portals, places where souls could become lost. Some traditions warned never to look into a mirror by candlelight after midnight. Others said your reflection could steal your soul if you stared too long. We modern thinkers laughed. But maybe the ancients were just trying to describe quantum awareness before they had the words. Here's the soft horror of it. What if a version of you is already crossed? And what if you did not notice? Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt, just for a moment, that something is off? A flicker of unfamiliarity, a second of disconnection, like looking into someone else's face, wearing your skin. That feeling has a name in some fields, displacement event, and it may mean you are no longer the version of yourself who woke up yesterday. People who experience these events sometimes find small inconsistencies afterward. A scar that moved, a favorite object missing, a memory others do not share. These are subtle things, easy to explain away, but they add up, and they suggest that your mirror self may not just be watching, they may be walking in your place. In parallel experiments, participants were asked to stare into their own eyes in a mirror for 10 minutes under low light. A significant number reported the same sequence of sensations: facial distortions, feelings of being watched, sudden surges of dread, and for some, temporary blackouts. One described it like this: I was looking at myself. Then something blinked. And when I blinked, I was outside myself, watching my body move. But it wasn't me inside anymore. Could mirrors act as moments of transfer? Could we be the reflections? The question breaks the mind if you hold it too long. But that is the nature of infinite timelines. If every version of you exists, then so do the ones who envy you, who miss what you have, who want your life. They may not be evil, but they are not you, and they might not want to go back. So what can be done? You do not need to fear mirrors, but you should treat them with awareness. Speak gently to your reflection. Acknowledge its presence. Trust the feeling when something is off. And above all, never mock the reflection you do not understand. You do not know what it has seen, or what it has lost. You are not alone in your skin. And sometimes, you are not even the first one in line. In the next chapter, we will explore the anomaly of timelines that collapse, alternate versions of Earth where no one exists, and those few who remember being there. They are called echoes of the erased, and some people still hear them calling. But for now, rest. This is Stellar Sleep Tales. And if the mirror seems a little quieter tonight, do not worry. It is only because it is still watching, and it already knows your face. Imagine waking up one morning and remembering a place that does not exist. You can still smell the trees from your old street. You remember the crack in the sidewalk near your front gate, the grocery store 2 blocks down with the flickering red sign. You even remember the name of your childhood friend, someone your parents swear you never met. You check the maps. You search online. There is no record of this street, no photo of that grocery store, no mention of that friend, not even in old yearbooks. Yet the memories remain. These are called echoes of the erased, faint memories of timelines that have collapsed or diverged beyond recognition. In a multiverse of infinite variations, not every version of reality survives. Some branch off and wither. Some are rewritten by larger events. Some are lost altogether, except for the people who still remember them. You might be one of those people. The Mandela effect is the surface of this phenomenon. Large groups of individuals share memories that do not align with recorded history. A logo that was always one way is suddenly different. A phrase in a film is not what you remember. Entire nations recall leaders or events that never officially occurred. At first, this seems like bad memory. But what if it is not? What if these are the final traces of forgotten timelines? The cosmic horror begins with this idea that our memories are more stable than the timelines we live in, that you might have been pulled from a version of Earth that no longer exists, shifted gently into a nearby copy, close enough that no one noticed. Except you. There are reports, strange ones, of people who remember catastrophes that never occurred. One man described fleeing a flood that destroyed his entire city. When he came to, soaked and trembling, the city was dry and unharmed. Others recall wars, blackouts, earthquakes, none of which happened here. They are not lying. They are displaced. In theoretical cosmology, some scientists propose that timelines exist as probability currents. They move forward, overlapping slightly with one another, like threads in a vast braid. Occasionally, a sudden fluctuation, what physicists call a timeline destabilization, can cause one current to collapse or merge into another. The result is seamless for most people, but not for all. Some notice. They feel a wrongness in the air. Colors seem slightly off. The shape of letters feels foreign. Familiar places feel hollow. It is not dramatic. It is subtle, like waking from a dream you did not know you were dreaming. We call these reality scars. One woman wrote about waking up in a house that was hers, but not quite. Her favorite painting was not on the wall. The door creaked in a way it never had before. Her dog had a small scar she could not remember, and her neighbor, who had always been friendly, did not seem to know her name. She kept a journal. Day by day, the differences grew. Her voice sounded strange to her. She developed an allergy to a food she had always eaten. Her reflection looked just slightly older, and then she stopped dreaming entirely. That is a pattern many displaced people report: loss of dreams, as if the mind no longer knows what future to simulate. Without an anchor timeline, even sleep becomes silent. There is a theory among fringe researchers that when a timeline collapses, its occupants do not die. Instead, their consciousness is moved, slid sideways into the closest surviving thread. The transition is seamless, but the cost is dissonance. You become the echo of a world no one remembers. A man in Argentina described a recurring nightmare. In it, he walks through a city, but it is empty. Every building is intact. The lights are on, but no one is there. No people, no cars, just silence and the soft hum of electronics. He hears his own footsteps echoing through streets that once held life. And then he wakes up, and the world feels only slightly more real. Others share dreams like this: deserted cities, silent earths, places where humanity has vanished, but the world remains intact. These may not be dreams at all. They may be imprints from lost timelines, echoes bleeding into the subconscious. Some of these worlds may have ended in nuclear fire, others in plague. Some may have simply decayed under the weight of entropy, fading without drama. But a few collapse for no reason we can detect. Realities that simply stop being real. And here is the eerie part. Sometimes you can still hear them. Some call it cosmic static, a soft hiss just at the edge of hearing, not in the ears, but in the mind, a presence like white noise, especially in moments of quiet. When you're alone in the shower, when the power goes out, when you wake up at 3 a.m. and the world feels paused, that sound is not nothing. It may be the memory of a vanished universe, pressing softly against your own. Some survivors describe auditory anomalies, songs that no longer exist, radio stations that vanish mid-broadcast, voices speaking in accents that do not match any known region, a child humming a lullaby that no one taught them. These are not hallucinations. They are time echoes. Researchers in Canada collected hundreds of audio logs from people claiming to hear fragments of erased timelines. When cleaned and amplified, many of these recordings contain overlapping words in multiple languages, layered backwards, some with strange harmonic frequencies that have not been replicated. Some of the messages were chilling. One repeating phrase translated into several tongues. "We are still here, but no one remembers." Another, "You forgot the sky, and so it forgot you." These messages are not proof, but they are not silence either. They suggest that timelines may leave residue, that even after collapse, reality is never fully erased. It leaves a faint burn mark in the multiverse, like afterimages on a screen, and certain minds, sensitive ones, can still tune into those frequencies. If you've ever felt nostalgia for a life you never lived, this may be why. You may be remembering a version of Earth that no longer has coordinates. You may be its last observer. In soft horror, the true terror is not monsters. It is absence, a wrongness that cannot be fixed, a loneliness that cannot be explained. And when the timeline you belong to is gone, that loneliness goes all the way down. It becomes part of your cells. It waits in your sleep. Some call these people the forgotten travelers, not time travelers, not dimension hoppers, just ordinary souls who fell through the cracks. The world kept turning, but they were never the same. They are not lost, but they are not fully found either. Sometimes they meet each other, a strange comfort, a shared wrongness. They recognize the silence in one another's eyes. They talk about memories that no one else believes in. And for a moment, the echoes find each other again. That is the only reunion they may ever have. You might be one of them. If the stars sometimes seem in the wrong place, if the moon feels too bright, if music no longer touches you the way it used to, it may not be depression. It may be that your original world is gone, and your mind remembers. This does not mean you are doomed. It means you are rare. A carrier of memories no one else holds. A museum of a timeline no longer mapped. You are a fragment of forgotten history, quietly alive in the backdrop of this one. In the next chapter, we follow the whispers further, to those who claim they can still hear messages from their alternate selves through static, dreams, and electrical devices. They are called the signal seekers. And some of them have started responding. But for now, rest. The world may feel wrong, but you are still breathing. And somewhere that is enough. This is Stellar Sleep Tales. Until the next signal. Somewhere in the dark, a voice is trying to reach you. It doesn't use words in the usual sense. You won't hear it over the hum of daily life. But if you listen at just the right moment, between sleep and waking, or when your mind goes silent, you might catch it. A phrase you didn't think, a name you didn't learn, a feeling that isn't yours. The ones who hear it often don't know what to call it. Some describe it as a ripple through their thoughts, like a conversation continuing somewhere behind the curtain. Others say it feels like being gently watched, but not in a threatening way, in a way that feels familiar, like an echo of yourself in another room. We call them the signal seekers. They are ordinary people, scientists, poets, nurses, truck drivers, teenagers, scattered across the world. They are not part of any one group, but all of them share one trait. They've heard something, and they want to know what it means. Some of them have begun to respond. A group in northern Sweden meets weekly in silence. They sit around a small, humming transmitter, a crew machine built from old radio parts and mineral coils, and they wait. They say the machine doesn't broadcast in sound, but in dreams. Each night after a session, they record what they see. The entries are eerily similar. A window looking out on a dark sea, a clock without hands ticking, a version of themselves, older or younger, sitting at a table across from them and whispering things that vanish the moment they wake. Different people, same visions. In Japan, an engineer modified his cochlear implant to detect what he called ultra-conscious frequencies, waves that don't register on normal instruments. He reported hearing soft patterns, like breath and syllables, while walking near high-voltage lines or standing close to sleeping animals. He began to map the signals, noting when they became stronger. Over time, he found they intensified near large bodies of water and weakened near machines with constant digital input. It was as if the signals avoided noise, preferring quiet, old places. He died unexpectedly in 2017, but his notebook survived, filled with diagrams of dream patterns and timelines drawn in circles rather than lines. On the last page, one sentence is written in faint pencil. We are them calling back. Some neuroscientists dismiss these claims as lucid dreaming, pareidolia, or trauma responses, but not all. In a quiet lab in South Korea, a sleep study was conducted using volunteers who claimed to have frequent dreams of other selves, alternate versions of themselves in unfamiliar yet vivid settings. The volunteers were monitored during REM sleep, and their brainwave patterns were mapped in real time. Something strange happened. Several participants showed dual patterns, two distinct rhythms overlaying each other. It was as if their minds were split, dreaming from two perspectives at once. One technician described it as like listening to two songs at once, both in perfect key, but from different albums. They ran the test again. Same results. The patterns seemed to align with parts of the brain associated not just with memory and language, but with identity, the deep, nonverbal sense of self. It was as if, during sleep, the volunteers were briefly syncing with another version of who they were. A physicist working with the team called it cross-timeline cognitive resonance. He believed that in moments of low sensory interference, the mind might become a kind of antenna, picking up versions of itself from nearby timelines, not by design, just by proximity. The deeper the multiverse, the thinner the walls. If you ever had a dream so real you woke up mourning its loss, missing people you've never met, grieving places you've never been, you might have experienced this resonance, not imagination, not fantasy, a broadcast from a nearby you. And you are not alone. One woman in Brazil set up what she called a mirror station. Each night, before bed, she placed an old radio beside her mirror, turned to a dead frequency. She sat in silence, eyes on her own reflection, waiting. She said the messages came not through sound, but in her own face. She'd see flickers, slight changes in her expression that weren't hers. Subtle, a twitch of the eye, a downward shift in the smile, as if something behind the mirror was watching her back. She began to speak aloud to it. Small things at first, a name, a question, a wish. Then one night, the radio sparked. Just once, a soft pop of static, and the reflection blinked on its own. She never spoke about it again, but her journal entries stopped with final line. I think she's listening now. This is not just ghost story material. It's becoming a kind of science. Quantum entanglement shows us that particles separated by great distances can still affect each other instantly. No message passes between them. No signal in the traditional sense. But the change is shared, as if reality itself keeps track of every variation. Now imagine your consciousness as part of a larger entangled system. If another version of you exists, even slightly different, there may be moments where the boundary thins. You feel their joy or pain. You catch their thoughts as your own. You dream their fears. And maybe, just maybe, they catch yours too. Some seekers believe the signals can be made stronger. In Scotland, a man constructed a chamber lined with basalt and copper coils. He called it a resonance shell. Inside, he meditated for hours, recording his brain's activity and the temperature of the room. Over time, patterns emerged. Slight shifts in electromagnetic fields, spikes in low-frequency sound, sudden feelings of familiarity with voices speaking on static-filled channels. He believed the chamber was not generating signals, but filtering out noise. Noise, in this case, means our own constant thought, our doubts, our distractions, our expectations. Once quieted, the true signal can be heard. You don't need a machine to try this. Some report success with sleep deprivation, sensory isolation, or deep trance states. But others say the best way is simpler. Fall asleep beside an old radio turned low, or sleep facing a mirror and ask a version of yourself to say hello. The results are not guaranteed. But many seekers say the moment they tried, earnestly, quietly, a message came. Sometimes a word, sometimes an image, sometimes just a feeling that someone else was there, sharing the same breath. For just one heartbeat of the night, there's something else. Several of these seekers, unconnected and scattered around the world, have drawn the same symbol, a spiral with jagged teeth, almost like a gear or an iris. Always 13 points. Always counterclockwise. They say it appeared in dreams. In one case, carved into frost on a window. No one knows what it means, but it keeps showing up. A researcher in Canada ran image analysis software on several hundred dream sketches collected from these individuals. The spiral showed up too often to be coincidence. It may be a kind of signature, or a destination. One participant claimed the spiral is not a symbol, but a gate. He dreamed he walked into it. Inside, he said, were rows of doors, each leading to another version of his life. In one, he was an artist. In another, a prisoner. In another still, a person he didn't recognize at all. And he said something followed him back. A whisper. It said, "You are all of them, but only one gets to speak." That's the danger in listening too closely. In trying to communicate with other selves, you risk letting them in, and not all of them are kind. In the final chapters of our journey, we will descend further into this mystery, into the lives of those who claim they've merged with their other selves, and those who say they've been replaced. Not imagined, not possessed, replaced, but for now, sleep. And if you hear your own voice tonight, saying something you do not remember thinking, do not be afraid. It may only be you, somewhere else, trying to say goodnight. This is Stellar Sleep Tales. We'll meet again before the next you does. There are stories, quiet ones, about people who come back different. They look the same, speak the same, remember the same birthdays and laugh at the same jokes. But something behind the eyes has changed. It is not always obvious at first. It builds slowly, like mist creeping under a door. A spouse might notice first. A friend might say, "You've been distant lately." Your favorite foods no longer taste right. Music sounds colder. And sometimes in the mirror, your own face feels like a mask. This is not about possession. It is not about ghosts. It is about the idea that in some rare cases, a person does not simply glimpse their other selves. They become one of them, or are replaced by one. Among the signal seekers, there is a term for this. They call it crossing. A crossing occurs when the boundary between versions weakens to the point of collapse. A version of you from another timeline steps in. The change is seamless. To the outside world, nothing happens. But inside, the current of self shifts, and you are no longer the same you who woke up the day before. Some researchers chalk this up to dissociation or psychotic breaks. In many cases, it may be, but not all. There are documented instances where individuals report waking up with vivid memories of lives they have not lived, knowing the layout of a house they have never visited, recognizing people they have never met. One man in India described waking from a fever dream and suddenly speaking fluent Russian, though he had never studied it. Tests confirmed it. He said he remembered being a soldier. Snow, a cathedral with shattered windows. He could not explain how or why. Later, he claimed he was not himself anymore. He said, "I remember dying, but not as me." Cases like this are rare, but they're increasing. In a small clinic in rural Argentina, a psychologist began noticing something unusual among her patients. Several of them, strangers to each other, came in with nearly identical experiences. They had returned from short naps or daily routines with a strange sense of dislocation. One woman described it as stepping into someone else's footprints. Clothes, but not quite a match. She remembered her children's names, but forgot where the dishes were kept. She said, "My house feels like a replica of my house." Another man said he found a note in his own handwriting, left on his refrigerator, saying, "You'll be fine. Just pretend." But he had no memory of writing it. The psychologist documented over a dozen such events. Each patient showed no signs of neurological damage, no signs of trauma, but all reported the same feeling. The world was slightly wrong. 1 degree off. Theories began to emerge. Some believe that under conditions of deep stress or high emotional energy, the self may fracture across nearby timelines. And in rare cases, one version may step forward to survive, while another fades. Not all crossings are permanent. Some say they fade after days or weeks. Others never reverse. But there is a darker possibility. Not all replacements are accidental. Some of the oldest stories in human folklore speak of changelings, creatures that look like us, act like us, but are not us. In some tales, they are left by fairies. In others, they emerge from the woods or crawl from the ocean. But perhaps these stories are older than myth. Perhaps they are memories, distorted over time. What if the changeling was not a supernatural creature, but a version of us, one who found a way to cross and chose not to go back? A man in Romania told a story to his granddaughter on his deathbed. He said that as a boy, he had drowned in a frozen lake, but he came back. Only his parents said he had never been to the lake that day. There was no record of the event. He said nothing for years. But sometimes, at night, he would wake screaming in a language no one knew, and he would sketch spiral patterns into the frost on the windows. Before he died, he whispered, "I am the one who stayed." His granddaughter grew up to study comparative myth. Her research showed striking similarities between global tales of doubles, mirrors, and replacement spirits. Different cultures. Same core story. A person is taken. A version is left behind. And no one notices, except the one replaced. This is where the horror begins. Imagine realizing one day that your memories are borrowed, that your preferences have changed for no reason, that you recognize strangers who treat you like an old friend, or worse, that someone is watching you with too much familiarity, a neighbor, a stranger on the train, someone whose face flickers with recognition, and then fear. They see the version of you that doesn't belong. One woman from Germany told researchers she was followed by a man for weeks. He never approached, just watched. Then one day, he slipped a note into her bag. It said, "You are not her." She was kind. She never saw him again. She began questioning her life, her choices, her memories. She remembered things no one else in her family did. She began dreaming of a different apartment, with different furniture. Eventually, she moved away, changed her name, said she wanted to become someone new, but deep down, she feared she already had. Then there are the echoes. Some individuals report hearing voices during sleep that speak in their own voice, but with different accents or emotional tones. These are not dreams. They are recordings. Playback from versions that are no longer alive or no longer alone. One signal researcher referred to this as personality leakage, a kind of bleed through from cells that have replaced or been replaced. These echoes are not conscious, but they can be noticed. A man in Canada said he heard himself laughing in the middle of the night, even though he was alone. He set up a recording device. One night, it captured the sound. His own voice, whispering a story about a fire he had never seen. The fire, he later discovered, had happened in a nearby town in a timeline simulation conducted by a theoretical AI group, a project never made public. The odds of such overlap are incalculable, unless the boundary between timelines is not a wall, but a membrane, thin, breathing, and sometimes porous. Crossings do not always require consent. One story stands apart. A child in New Zealand went missing for 3 hours during a hike. When found, she claimed she had been walking with her other dad. Same face, but his eyes were too quiet. She said he took her to a place where the trees had no roots and the sky was green. He told her she belonged there now. Then he blinked, and she was back. The family dismissed it as imagination. But the girl grew up drawing trees without roots and people with empty eyes. She refused to sleep near mirrors or under full moons. At 17, she vanished again. Only her sketchbook remained. The last page was filled with spirals. Not the spiral of comfort, but sharp, clawed turns. We are left to wonder. In a multiverse of infinite versions, how many have crossed without being noticed? How many of us are replacements? And how many of us are originals, quietly watching our own lives change without understanding why? If you have ever felt that you were not yourself, not in the dramatic way, but in the soft, gnawing sense that something inside you shifted, you are not alone. And maybe that feeling is not a flaw. Maybe it is the only honest part left. In the next chapter, we descend even deeper into the lives of those who claim to have met their own alternate selves face to face, not in dreams, not in echoes, but in waking life. It may be the rarest crossing of all, or the beginning of something worse. Until then, stay still, stay kind. And if someone close to you changes in small, perfect ways, listen carefully. You may be the only one who remembers who they used to be. What if your dreams are more than just dreams? What if those strange feelings, the sudden deja vu, the fear that someone else might be living your life, the sense that you've been here before but not quite like this, are all echoes from another version of you? As we've explored tonight, from past life memories and multiverse crossings to the eerie possibility of being replaced by an alternate self, we are beginning to understand that the boundaries of the self are far more fluid than we were taught. The science of infinite timelines and multiverse identity is still unfolding, but one thing is clear. Your mind may be more than just a reflection of this world. It may be a receiver, tuned into other frequencies, other versions, other lives. As more researchers study the phenomenon of doppelganger sightings, timeline shifts, and personality drift, we find new support for the idea that consciousness might travel or even fragment across dimensions. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt just slightly off? Or heard your own voice in a dream saying something you'd never say? These are more than curiosities. These could be time echoes, resonances from the edge of possibility. Many scientists now believe that what we call reality may just be the dominant signal among countless competing ones, and that under the right conditions, we might accidentally or intentionally hear, feel, or even merge with others. At Stellar Sleep Tales, we create more than stories. We create quiet space for wonder. Each episode is designed not only to help you rest, but also to gently stretch the borders of your perception, to invite deeper questions as your mind winds down. Whether you're interested in quantum immortality, dream travel, alternate dimensions, or the eerie intersection of memory and multiverse, you are not alone here. If tonight's journey resonated with you, consider subscribing. We post weekly deep dives into mysteries of the cosmos, consciousness, and time itself, all in the calm, immersive voice you've come to trust. Your support helps us continue exploring these strange, beautiful questions and creating long-form content designed to relax the body while stimulating the imagination. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever met someone who seemed a little too familiar? Or woken up with memories that didn't feel quite yours? We'd love to hear your story. And now, as your eyes grow heavy, we invite you to gently release the idea of being only one person. For in the grand architecture of the universe, you are a constellation of selves, each whispering across the dark, endless ocean of time. Until next time, stay soft, stay strange, and remember, the version of you that listens may not be the only one who heard.